the positive impact on trade, higher rates of sustainable growth, and strengthen opportunities for investment and employment, for education, for pharmaceuticals, physical arrangements, a number of things, a wide range of things that we benefit from. There's certain risk, of course, that we will take necessary steps to mitigate against. Because clearly, a set of people come together with different ideas and ideologies. We do have our differences, but the main goal is to unite and integrate people of the region so that we can at least grow our economies, expand on trade, and kind of thing. For instance, if you're a member from the OECS, you can come to any OECS member state and stay there undisturbed. That's what the region, that's what the structure is all about. The efforts to, while risk exists, I would like to emphasize that we will take the necessary steps as a people in Montserrat, because I'm very much, and Montserrat is very much part of this organization. We have been working with it for the past years, and we continue to do so. But we take the measures to offset those and minimize the damages, which are known or unknown, their potential or unintentional negative effects that we will face along the road. It is true that independent states can make decisions on the spot, whereas in some cases I have to refer back home and have a discussion. That's one of this risk and the disadvantage that I have as an OT leader, because whereas my colleague here can say yes on the spot, I have to go back home and talk to he tell me who. That's the point. But regional integration conveys unity among us as a Caribbean people in the face of often very hostile international conditions. It is a strong sense of integration. It's present among us. We can achieve much by working together. So the whole thing about integration, about us working together for common good for all of us. And that is basically my introduction on us as a region, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, working together for the good of all of us. I now ask the Director General to speak to you briefly.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And first of all, I want to acknowledge with great appreciation and gratitude the hospitality of the government and people of Montserrat for hosting this meeting. Trust me, it was not easy to get here, but that was part of the reason why it was all the more reason why it was so important for us to be here. We have for some time been advocating and saying that we need, whenever heads of government meet to discuss matters of regional integration, it is very important that we touch base with the people of the region. The people of the OECS need to know our heads, get to know them intimately, get to understand their perspectives, and to hear their voices speaking together. It's one thing to see on television Prime Minister Gonzalez and the chairman and President Lechimi and the others talking on television, but it is a different matter to meet them personally and to hear from them their views. It is also very important to us that the matter of regional integration supersede national politics and divisions. And that is why we were very happy to have the leader of the opposition sit at this table with the heads in Montserrat. There is precedent for this because when Guadeloupe joined the OECS, we had a meeting after the installation of Guadeloupe in the membership. The meeting was held in Guadeloupe. We had a town hall meeting at the University of des Antilles in Guadeloupe, and it was very, very heavily attended. And the meeting lasted probably, I think it was about 3 hours. People just asking questions, raising issues, supporting the idea, and most importantly, making suggestions about their aspirations and what they would like to see coming out of regional integration. Now, I'm sure most of you, or I hope most of you here would have heard of the revised Treaty of Basseterre, which is the new version, or not so new, the integration movement is 40 plus years old, but the revised Treaty of Basseterre is what is our guiding light. This lays out by treaty and therefore by obligation to member states all of the things that they are expected to do to work together. It is essentially a manifesto and a commitment by all of our member states to work together to achieve defined objectives. And these defined objectives, very simply put, are about the free movement of people, the free movement of goods, the free movement of services, the free movement of capital. And there are other areas that have to do with harmonization of policy across the entire OECS. Think of it this way. I'm not so regrettably familiar with the geography of, and I guess that's a failure of our education. I know braids in Montserrat. But if you think of Montserrat as the OECS, just as you are in one country with different villages, ultimately the objective of the revised Treaty of Basseterre is to treat the entire OECS as one village. So you can move freely from Braids to Plymouth to whatever part of the island. Same thing with the OECS. We have made significant progress on that front because you can now move before. If you travel to, let's say, St. Lucia or Dominica, the immigration officer will ask, well, how long are you staying? If you say you're staying for 2 years, well, where are you going to be staying? Do you have enough money to support yourself? All kinds of questions will be asked. Right now, with the OECS freedom of movement, no such questions should be asked. You enter, you show a Montserratian or any OECS picture ID, government-issued picture ID, so whether passport or driver's license also, or a national ID, NIS card, and your document, you are given indefinite stay. So you can come to work, play, pass through, whatever your purpose. Ultimately, what that would translate into, if you have business here in Montserrat and you want to set up shop in Antigua or in St. Kitts, you should, just as if you're setting up, you're extending your business from Plymouth to Braids, where you've already paid income taxes, bringing your supplies into the country, so you can move your supplies to any part of the country, vehicles, staff, whatever, to other parts of the country to set up business. The same should obtain across the entire footprint of the OECS. So going to do business, you want to extend your business from Montserrat to Antigua, you can go in, set up, when you register your business in Montserrat in the first place, it should automatically be registered all across the OECS. So you don't have to register it in every country to have a presence there. Equally, if you bring in all your stock into Montserrat and you want to transfer it to other islands, to your branches in the other islands, there should not be another set of tax paid on materials and supplies that you've already paid taxes for. So that, in summary, your children coming in, having to move to school, the same conditions apply. They can move easily through the education systems. Your spouses, relatives, your NIS payments, if you live for 10 years in Montserrat and you spend 5 years in Grenada and 6 years in St. Vincent, all your NIS payments accrue. When pension time comes, there should be no problem with receiving your full pension based on the transfers that would happen among the countries. So it's really about beginning to work together in a serious way as a family, as a unit, so that we can aggregate our strengths. I'm sure those of you who are older will recall at the time of the West Indies Federation, the famous statement was 1 from 10 leads not. For us in the OECS, we are 11 member states, but 1 and 1 is 11 and not 2. That is the power of the strength. And in many ways, the OECS has already achieved a number of things that point to this value. So for example, we have our pool procurement service, which is about 40 years old. It was set up that long ago, and we have transacted over $1 billion of business for the member states of the OECS. You may not even know some of these benefits because whatever drugs are in use or medical supplies in the public health system, we order them as a pool thing. So rather than Montserrat ordering and Antigua ordering and St. Kitts ordering separately, we group the demand so that way we're able to get better value for money in procuring these services. Since COVID, we have changed the PPS from a pool pharmaceutical service to a pool procurement service. So everything that the governments want in common, that we can get the better price by putting together the order, we're able to do this. We did it in COVID with devices for the schools. We've done it for school supplies and equipment. We've done it after Hurricane Maria with Dominica and some of the other countries that were hit by Irma and Maria to bring in even building supplies for the member states at significantly reduced costs. And that is the value of this thing. Two last points I want to make is the fact that to understand the structure of the OECS. At the head of the OECS is the authority. This grouping of leaders that you see sitting here constitute the authority. They are the highest decision-making body. Below them, you have different councils of ministers. You have the Economic Affairs Council, which is like a sort of higher order body that looks at economic development issues. And we have started having different councils of ministers for different purposes as the need arises. So for example, we have ministers of tourism, of education, of youth, of agriculture, of health, and they meet at least twice a year to discuss issues. Prior to COVID, we started using Zoom as a means of, which is now popularly used since COVID, as a means of communication, so we can have meetings as frequently as we require. And increasingly, these ministerial councils work very closely together to share ideas. We have also taken the innovative step of establishing WhatsApp groups for all of these ministerials, including the heads of government. So making decisions or sharing, if your Minister of Health has a query about something and you say, I wonder what Antigua or Dominica or Martinique is doing about this, he can just put a query up on the site, and within hopefully minutes or a couple hours, he will get a response from the other member states. So that way we are able to respond more quickly. And one of our objectives at the Commission is to ensure that we're able to respond very nimbly and with agility to the responses of member states. An important principle for us is that how we program the work that we do is not to sit in Castries, St. Lucia and make plans for the member states. We apply a principle called a co-creational approach. Everything that we do starts with a discussion at the ministerial level or at the level of the heads of government, determining what are their ambitions and how do they want to see things go on a particular issue. And then, importantly and increasingly, we want to engage the voices of the citizens of the OECS in that process. So we have had ideas come into the Commission, somebody sending an email saying, what are you all doing about X, Y, and Z? And then, based on that, if it's a good idea, we pick it up, and then we start to discuss it and begin to shape programs around these things. So this is where we go in. We also have in the structure of the OECS an OECS Assembly. Now, the OECS Assembly is a very interesting structure because it is a parliament of the OECS, but there's no opposition in the parliament. Now, understand me, it doesn't mean there's no difference, because the membership of that parliament, each national delegation comprises government and opposition in the proportion that they are represented in the national parliament. So if the proportion is 5-3, then we scale it down to the size of the delegation. Everybody has the same size delegation, but representing the same mix proportionately of government and opposition. The focus of the Assembly is beyond national politics. It is about shaping regional solutions, but ensuring that the parliaments of the OECS are adequately represented here. And this is a very useful tool. In some of our member states, when you follow the news, you think the politics is so antagonistic. You'll be surprised. Antigua is the seat of that parliament. You'll be surprised in the room where we are waiting for the parliament, the assembly to begin, the level of camaraderie and so on that happens between both government and opposition, because the focus there is not on the national politics, is on where are we going together. And for us, we've just defined 5 priorities for this coming period. The first is accelerating regional integration, reinventing the economy. What are the 5 now? Reinventing the economy. and yeah, valuing the environment and deepening inclusion in this inclusion and equity. So with these priorities, this is our roadmap for the future and the priority areas that we are going to attend to. And the heads today approved the budget and the plan for us to work on these 5 priorities. And if you think about them, none of these priorities can work effectively without each supporting the other. So we can't build resilience without reinventing the economy or valuing the environment, right? And when we do all of this thing, we also will be deepening regional integration. So this is our guiding light, and one of the things I would encourage everybody to do is check our website. You can sign up when you load. It's www.oecs.int. When you log on to that website, you'll be asked if you want to enter your email address to get updates. We put out fortnightly updates. So that way you can keep abreast of what is happening at the OECS. Importantly, for young professionals, all jobs at the OECS are advertised. We are looking to ensure that the staffing of the OECS Commission is more reflective of the geography of membership. So we'd like to have understaffed people from the full complexion of members, French people from Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Vincent's, Grenada, all of the member states. Scholarships are advertised. Increasingly, other regional organizations invite us to come on board and help them advertise opportunities. So it's a very useful site. And most importantly, you'll be able to also talk back to us and give feedback or ideas or suggestions on your views as a citizen of your country and the OECS as to where you'd like to see us go. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. What do you want me to do? Either way? Either way, right? Okay. It's a little bit for last. Okay. So, yes. Okay. Yes. Prime Minister Joe from St. Kitts.
Thank you very much, Premier Farrell. I also want to thank the people of Montserrat for welcoming me and welcoming us with such warmth. I have said, and I keep saying, that for a country of about 3,000 to 4,000 people, you are definitely punching above your weight. Our presence here, yes, has been well organized at a very professional level. And so this is one of the things I will take back with me when I leave Montserrat. I'll tell people that the volcano has long passed and Montserrat is open for business. I also want to recognize your leader of the opposition here at the table with us, because what is being expressed is that this organization, the OECS, is an organization of integration, regional integration, but that integration should also be felt at the national and local level. And so when we speak as an OECS, we speak with one voice as a people in this part of the Caribbean, seeking to build deeper relationships so that we can confront the challenges that we face together. And as you know, the motto of our St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union, the union, which is not a political organization, is unity is strength. And so you would also recognize that in 1981, in Basseterre, a significant signatory type of event took place where the OECS, in earnest, with a mandate, was basically set on course. And so my own country has played a significant role in the formation of this organization. But I think it's important that the people of the OECS get to know us, the authority, the leadership, get to know the organization, and to understand that this organization is working tirelessly hard on your behalf. Even when you don't know it, this organization is working extremely hard. And so this afternoon's proceedings is really to bring to you the information so that you can connect in a way and recognize that this organization is reflecting you and fighting for you. Because we believe through integration, we will be able to achieve more together than as individuals. And so the thrust of the OECS is to work together so that we can face the challenges. As I move around, I come to recognize how much we are one people, how much we really have in common. I met people here, and I keep meeting people who are saying to me, Dr. Drew, I have this family in St. Peter's, that family in Newtown. I come from St. Kitts. These are areas in St. Kitts for those who don't know. And that is reinforcing in my own mind that really the OECS is a true reflection of who we are as a people. We are really one people. I, as a new Prime Minister, this is my first session sitting with the heads, making significant decisions that would impact the lives of our citizens of the OECS and would also impact your own life. But the decisions that we have made are decisions to impact your life in very positive and meaningful ways. And so I am happy, along with my colleagues, to be a part of that. I also took the opportunity, and on my left are our brothers and sisters from Martinique and from Guadeloupe. And so we cannot just limit ourselves to those of us who speak English, but we must also recognize that around us we have those who speak French. And you know the history. We speak English because we were brought here by the English, and we became colonies, and some of us are still colonies, and we adopted the language of those who were the colonizers, correct? And those who speak French because the countries where their ancestors went spoke French. But really, we are one people, because at any given time, one of your ancestors could have been on a French island, and one of my ancestors could have come from a French island, and the languages could have been switched. However, what we do have in common is that all of us came to the Caribbean, all of us have some common challenges, and the fundamental challenge is for us to thrive as a Caribbean and to thrive as a people. So in that way, I was happy to see the presidents from Martinique and from Guadeloupe sitting at the table with me as the Prime Minister from St. Kitts and Nevis and other Prime Ministers in the region, really saying to the people of the OECS that no longer will we allow language to separate us, but we would allow that which join us together to be the fundamental cord that keep us together. And so I want to wrap up and give others a time to talk, but I want to finally say, long live the OECS and long live the peoples of this part of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now turn to, I won't say another newcomer, he's not that new. Prime Minister of Grenada, Dick and Mitchell.
Thank you, Premier Farrell. Good afternoon to fellow colleagues at the head table, and a special good afternoon to particularly the Montserratians in the audience who've come out to hear a little bit from us this afternoon. Premier Farrell, is this only one-way traffic, as in we speak only, or is the audience going to be given a chance to speak? Okay. All right, well, I really want to say first thank you to Premier Farrell and all of Montserrat for hosting us. I've had a wonderful time. I think I've had the 2 best night sleeps I've had since getting involved in public office in Montserrat. So I can assure you I'll be coming back to Montserrat whenever I need to get a good night's sleep. So, and I certainly enjoyed the goat waters that I was provided with yesterday, so much so that they said if it's nice, do it twice. So I had to ask for a takeaway. So, so that tells you I've truly enjoyed my time being here outside of the work we came to do. And I've met several persons living in Montserrat from other islands. And so despite your size and the challenge you've had of, in a sense, having your entire tongue destroyed by the volcano, I think you still are a melting pot of OECS integration. And to that extent, having this OECS 72nd conference in Montserrat, I think you are well deserving of that. And in Jamaican language, you're small, but you're certainly talawa. So I want to thank you for hosting us. I will not comment much other than to associate myself with all of the comments that have gone before. And given that there are quite a few of us still to speak at the table, I will give them the opportunity. And if you have any questions, should we come to that, I'll be happy to entertain them. So thank you very much.
Announce the next person.
The next speaker is President Lechimi, President of Martinique Territorial Council.
Bonsoir. Bonsoir. I don't speak good English. I have to speak French. If you prefer Creole, no. French. Mais je suis vraiment très heureux. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez.
I am very happy to be here.
Monsieur le Premier ministre,
Mr. Prime Minister
Farrell, vraiment, c'est la première fois que je viens ici.
It's my first time here in Montserrat.
Et merci pour votre accueil.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome.
Le sens que vous donnez à ce sommet.
For the direction that you're giving to this summit.
La question qu'on pourrait se poser, vous, le public,
the question
dans
that
un débat intéressant.
The question that we can ask is you, the public, the population, what's the debate?
Qu'est-ce qu'un Français, Martinique, vient faire chez les Anglais?
It's why Martinique, a French, is coming to the English.
Ma réponse est simple.
My answer is simple.
Vous savez, il y a plusieurs siècles de cela.
You know, hundreds of years ago,
cette terre appartenait à des Amérindiens.
This land was part of the Amerindians.
Et par les circonstances de l'histoire,
and its history and the circumstances of history,
les colons ont emmené les gens ici, ont fait l'extinction des Indiens.
And the colonizers made the extinction of the native populations.
Ils ont importé nos frères et sœurs d'Afrique.
And they imported our brothers and sisters from Africa.
D'Inde, de l'Inde.
India, from India.
Et de plein de pays.
And other countries.
Et nous ont divisés.
And they divided us.
Depuis des décennies et des dizaines d'années.
For hundreds and thousands of years. Hundreds of years.
J'ai décidé, avec le peuple martiniquais,
I decided with the people of Martinique
de rentrer à la maison.
To come back home.
Et ma maison, c'est la Caraïbe.
And my home is the Caribbean.
Je suis dans le contexte européen.
I'm in the European context.
Je suis dans le contexte de la République française.
I'm inside the French Republic.
Et je suis avant tout martiniquais et caribéen.
But I'm first of all Martinican and Caribbean. And it's for that.
C'est pour cela que je suis revenu à la maison commune de la Caraïbe.
And it's because of this reason that I came back to the commune house, to my house, to the Caribbean.
Je voudrais aussi saluer le peuple de Montserrat qui a vécu des moments tragiques.
And I'd like to say to the Montserrat people who had tragic events.
Et à chaque fois que je croisais quelqu'un de Montserrat, des enfants, des jeunes, des personnes plus âgées.
And every time I saw someone from Montserrat, like young, the youth, people from elders,
Je voyais chacun accroché à sa détermination
I could see in their eyes their determination
et à sa volonté de renaître,
and their wish to be born again,
de résister.
to resist.
Pour moi, c'est très important.
For me, it's very important, this resilience.
Vous êtes un exemple pour l'ensemble de la Caraïbe après le drame que vous avez connu il y a quelques années.
You are an example for the whole Caribbean after what happened a few years ago.
La Martinique est un pays qui a 370 000 habitants,
Martinique is a country with 370,000
avec
inhabitants,
une capacité démographique et économique très importante aussi.
with a capacity demographically and economically very important.
Bien entendu, ce qui s'est passé il y a 42 ans exactement à Basseterre,
Of course, what happened 42 years ago in Basseterre
par la création de l'OECS,
with the creation of OECS
est un acte extrêmement important pour l'ensemble de la Caraïbe.
is an act very crucial for the creation of the Caribbean,
Fédérer les moyens,
to federate the means,
regrouper les forces,
to strengthen,
organiser un développement moins dépendant de nos pays qui sont en Europe, l'Angleterre et la France.
to organize a development which is less dependent on other countries like France or
Assurer la
Europe,
circulation de la population des biens et des marchandises.
and to go for the free movement of goods and
En
people,
gros, construire sans s'exclure du monde un
Tout.
marché qui est le nôtre.
to build a market that's ours without excluding from the world,
Pour relever les défis de la mondialisation,
to help with globalization and the difficulties.
c'est pour cela qu'il y a 5 ans, la Martinique a décidé d'adhérer à l'OECS
It's for this reason that Martinique decided to become part of the OECS,
sans pour cela sortir de l'Union européenne,
with still being part of the European Union,
sans pour cela sortir de la République française,
with still being part of the French Republic,
mais avec une forte autonomie
but
locale
with more autonomy
afin qu'on puisse décider nous-mêmes de notre destin.
so that we can decide for ourselves of our destiny.
Et le travail qui est fait par l'OECS
And the work that is done by the OECS
est un travail qui est remarquable
is a remarkable work
parce qu'il n'est jamais facile de réunir des populations qui se sont divisées.
because it's never easy to bring back populations that have been divided.
Ce n'est pas la langue qui va nous empêcher, et tu as raison, Monsieur le Ministre,
And you
de
are
nous
right, Mr.
réunir.
Minister, it's not the language that's going to separate us.
C'est notre force capacité à nous retrouver malgré les blessures,
And it's our capacity to being back together even despite those challenges,
afin de préparer un devenir nouveau pour nos enfants.
to prepare another world for our children.
Merci à l'OECS
Thank you for the OECS.
et nous allons tout faire pour, avec nos moyens et surtout notre détermination, accompagner l'OECS dans les meilleures conditions possibles.
And we'll do whatever we can with our means to accompany the OECS in any way possible.
Merci et
Thank
bon
you.
courage.
Thank you very much, President Lechemi. We all agree that the Carib and the Arawaks once settled in these places and they were all displaced, so we are one family. Yes, Africans came in. I now turn to my colleague, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, and just to say that early this year, member, we sat together at a virtual assembly meeting. I think it's this year. We had it this year. Yeah, this year. Yeah. So that's what integration is all about. Opposition leader, the Prime Premier, and another member sat together as part of the Legislative Assembly of the OECS. So, honorable member. Honorable Lewis.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. I just want to join with you, Honorable Premier, to welcome all the heads of government to Montserrat, and I'm happy to hear that the young Premier beside me got his best slept nights of sleep in Montserrat, and I'm happy to hear that already you have won him over as one more tourist to Montserrat. That is good. I really want to use the opportunity to congratulate the Secretary General on the work that his team and himself has been doing over the years. And I have one bone to pick with him. And I'll give him one advice, only one advice I have for him. I really truly believe that he needs to accelerate the public relations and awareness drive. Because I've been looking at after I was asked to join today, I've been looking at the website, and it's pleased to see a number of work that they've been doing. And I decided to give him some free PR today. I will send him an invoice a little bit later. But I'm pleased to see the OECS Regional Health Project that is running for 5 years, that is being supported by the World Bank. It is designed to build capacities and to improve the response to emergencies in the health sector. I believe that's important, given we're not quite out of it, but we are pushing our way out of COVID-19, and we understand the importance of having the strengthening of our health sector. I think that we don't know a lot about this because it's not well promoted, and so that is the area where I'll give some advice to the General Secretary. I think you're doing a great job, but we need the promotion, and I hope that some people in the audience would ask a question, and so you could give us more information on that. I also was impressed to see the RIGHT program, the regional integration through growth, harmonization, and technology. Really, I saw it and I looked through it and I realized that there's a lot of good information, but as again I said, the citizens, the ministers know about it, the technicians know about it in the Secretariat, but we, the citizens of the OECS, we need to get this information so we can appreciate the work that is being done to further enhance the regional integration, and then you would have less persons questioning the relevance and benefits of regional integration. I see that there are some 18 components of the RIGHT program, but we have limited time, so I think I wanted to just mention 5 of the 18. Establishment of free circulation of goods legislative framework. Of course, the Premier now would have the support of the opposition on that. Anything to strengthen the regional integration. It's good to see that we're working through governance, and there we are working to harmonization of legislation in our individual parliaments so that we can realize the regional integration at the OECS level. Of course, the border management system, we welcome the freedom to move that we have, but we also want to protect our islands from undesirables. The enhancement of tourism competitiveness, that was an interesting one because everybody at this table, the islands are competing for the tourism dollar. And however, I see the importance of the OECS working together to improve the competitiveness because as a region, we are competing with other regions, and therefore we have to make sure that together we work to improve our tourism product and keep the quality at the highest level as possible. I also thought it was important to mention the increased opportunities for market and entry promotion. I tell you, in Montserrat, there's a lot of goods that if I was to take you to some of these people today, you would definitely not have place to put in your bag and take some of these items back. But the thing about it, you should not have to come to Montserrat to know about them. And therefore, I'm happy to see that there is a system where these goods will be placed on that particular internet that will be used. So whether you're in Montserrat, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, wherever, that you'll be able to see what Montserrat have to offer, and if you wish to purchase, you can purchase. I think that's an excellent idea, and I want to again commend the Commission, and of course, by extension, the authority, because the ministers, the prime ministers and premiers, they are the boss of the Commission. So anything good the Commission does, the boss must get credit by extension. So again, we all know how important it is for every island in the member state or member state island to, well, we know how important investment is to us. Sometimes we don't necessarily have the technical resource in some of these islands, and as a result, we miss out on some real good investment opportunities. So it really pleased my heart to see the harmonization of the OECS investment framework on the agenda. So I'm not going to take up much more time. All I said to the Secretary General, I'm begging you please to step up the PR and awareness drive.
Thank you very much. So we definitely will take on board your advice, and a little later I'll give some explanation as to some of the initiatives that we are coming with respect to heightened public relations and PR. At this point, we would like to invite the Honorable Alva Baptiste, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Civil Aviation of St. Lucia, who's representing Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre, to give remarks.
Thank you very much, Director General, members of the head table, my fellow Caribbean brothers and sisters, good evening. Before my brief intervention, I want to really thank the government and people of Montserrat for the kind hospitality. From the time we landed at the airport up until this point, it has been a constant love, a constant flow of affection. And I know that warmth has nothing to do with global warming, but the natural warmth of the people of Montserrat. I want to also commend Premier Farrell for his expert navigation of the agenda that we dealt with in this meeting. He navigated it efficiently and effectively, and we had a very productive two-day meeting that will only impact positively on the people of the OECS. I want to utilize the words of the DG as a ready compass to set my course. Yesterday, in his brief address in this very room, he indicated that we cannot change our history. We cannot change our geography, but we can change our trajectory. We have no alternative in this region but to change the trajectory. We live in a very different world to what we once knew. And I want the people of Montserrat to understand that the borders of this island is not really the limit of their natural habitat, but the entire OECS region and the entire Caribbean region. So just like Americans move from state to state, you are free to move from island to island. Before independence, people were moving freely in the region. With independence, everybody put up partitions, and now we have recognized the need to put down those partitions if we have to engage meaningfully. We have a number of things to be proud of. We have the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. We have our own court to deal with matters in this region. We have our own central bank that plays a vital role in keeping currency stability, in a very positive equilibrium in this turbulent world that we are in. It is only through unity that we are going to make progress. Like the French would say, c'est l'union qui fait la force. And if we look at what is happening in the world today, we are moving from Bretton Woods after the Second World War, when we were looking for an entirely new beginning. And today we are in that neoliberal environment which calls for a very different way of doing business. Inequality is growing in this new world of growing and unbridled capitalism. You find that 1% of the world's population controls approximately 82% of the world's wealth. And inequality is rising in the various countries that we have. Can you imagine the 27 richest persons in the world has wealth equivalent to the poorest half of the world's population, 3.8 billion people. So there is an urgent call for us to organize ourselves into that integrated whole to navigate the turbulence of the moment. And we have very special institutions that will assist us in doing that. So I want you, the people of Montserrat, not to look at your island as the limit of your potential, as where you must stay as a matter of course, but feel free to identify with a wider construct. And that is the whole idea of coming together. We, in our foreign policy, we try to insert our small economies into larger frameworks so that we can create an improved framework for us to match our basic need with greater possibilities. So I must say to you that I'm a very peaceful man. I am very shy and very quiet. And Montserrat mirrors those qualities of mine. So it's a very calm place, and I think it really creates the conducive environment for the seeds of progress to germinate, for you to experiment with new models, so that you develop your country in a way that will complement the other islands, and the other islands developing in a way that will complement the efforts of the people of Montserrat. So by way of general conclusion, let me again thank the people of Montserrat, thank the government for that amazing hospitality. And like I said before, it has nothing to do with climate change or global warming, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the volcano either. So I wish you the very best. I'm leaving this island tomorrow, if God spare, with very pleasant memories of the people of Montserrat. May God continue to bless you and protect you. And like the Spanish would say, la lucha continua. The struggle continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Baptiste. We have left for last, the best for last. Prime Minister Gonzalez of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you very much, my brother Joseph. And good afternoon, good evening to the people of the Eastern Caribbean and Montserrat in particular. I see Montserrat loves to elect people with biblical names, Joseph
and Paul.
And Paul. Joseph, of course, became the prime minister to Pharaoh in Egypt, and since General Sisi is in charge of Egypt, he had to satisfy with Montserrat. And Paul, servant of the Lord, called to be an apostle after he has traversed the whole area. His letters, he went to Thessalonica, he went to Macedonia, he wrote the Philippians, the Colossians, and you ended up in Montserrat. And Deacon has decided, he didn't tell you the whole truth, he told you he slept well, but I think that he's the only man among us up here who doesn't have a bride. I think he's looking for a bride in Montserrat. And we have to help him.
You didn't tell him you promised me one from...
Yeah, I promised him one from Caracu, from Union Island, which is near to Grenada, but I ain't make any progress yet. He's very demanding. Now, it's not easy to integrate islands. When you're an island, you think that this is the world. There's the seawater around you. And there is the temptation always to have an inward look. But the sea itself tells you there's something beyond. So you must have an outward gaze. So you have to balance between this inward look and the outward gaze, because the real world tells you that just having an inward look not going to help you develop your country too well. So you have to also look out and combine them. And we in the OECS, we have had a shared experience. And the issue with the OECS, as with all integration movements, particularly of this type, is how do we translate a shared experience into a structured expression. And we have managed to do that in the OECS to the benefit of all of us. I have a $20 bill in my hand. It's not Montserrat money, it's not St. Vincent money, it's the East. Don't point, don't come for my $20 bill. I see you pointing at my money. We have had a currency union, a central bank for 30-odd years. This is part of the OECS union. And this money which I have in my hand is, for 30-odd years, $2.70 equals $1 US. In that time, Jamaica's money has moved from a little drop of money to $1, to a US dollar, until now you have to take a wheelbarrow for $1. I'm not pulling down Jamaica. I'm just saying what are the facts. This is because of unity. Don't take this for granted. And this has its attractions. When the plane, the SVG Air from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I am putting this back. If you want to show me one with the spec man, the $100, you can bring it, let me hold it up, and I'll keep that one in addition to this one. The SVG Air comes here. You know what regulates it? The Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. How the pilots are trained, the routes you fly in, checking the maintenance on the planes. Without OECS, you're not going to be able to have that. My brother, the foreign minister from St. Lucia, mentioned the court. When the High Court judge comes here to hear the case, the Court of Appeal, that's OECS also. They're part of the OECS. When you get cheap drugs, or cheaper than usual, cheaper than the drugs in America, I'll tell you that. Because the pharmacists, big pharma rip off people in America. We have the regional procurement system of drugs, headquarters in St. Lucia. There are all of these elements which come together to make the OECS a living reality, which it touches and concerns a range of aspects of your lives. The same thing with security, with the regional security system, which is not part of the OECS, but linked to it, because we have the links there too with Barbados, and security. You may be wondering, well, there's the OECS. You talk about those things. And you heard Paul reeled off a number of capital projects. And you go on the website and you'll find them. Well, the truth is this. There are agencies financial institutions and other agencies like the World Bank, the European Union, they would decide that they have a particular program in education or in health, education, telecommunications. And they would say, well, this particular project can better be done regionally. And they do it through the OECS. But you have a national expression for it. And then you say, well, if you have this thing with the OECS, what about CARICOM? Well, we are not the only integration movement. We are the tightest form of integration. And we are linked also to CARICOM because we are members of CARICOM. And CARICOM has some similar but some different purposes. And the important matter is to have points of contact and relevance between the OECS and CARICOM. The same thing with the Association of Caribbean States. The Association of Caribbean States is about 27, 28 countries and territories, all washed by the Caribbean Sea, save and except El Salvador, which is linked to the number of Caribbean countries washed by the Caribbean Sea in Central America. They have the Association of Caribbean States, and they're concerned with trade, technology, tourism, transport, and disaster preparedness. And then there are 33, 34 countries in CELAC, the Community of States of Latin America and the Caribbean, in which the countries in CARICOM, in the OECS, also belong to that body. But that's a body involving in political interface with the United Nations, with the European Union, and with other power blocks. But this tight integration movement is the foundation stone for us. And it's important to realize that we have to make it practical. So there are some member states in the OECS which are full members, and some are associate members. Because the associate members do not agree on working on everything. But we work on those matters on which it is in our interest to work. And then, of course, we began as an English-speaking organization. But you heard my brother Serge Lechimi from Martinique, and we have a brother from Guadeloupe also here. Both countries are associate members. I want you to understand the significance of this. Those two territories now come in. They're part of France. They're the overseas territories of France. And they have come to us as associate members, and there are many areas in which we cooperate. They are not part of, for instance, the freedom of movement arrangements. But critically, between them, there are over 800,000 people, more than the rest of the OECS. And they are our Caribbean brothers and sisters. We have a similar shared experience, only there was French colonialism and ours British. But that shared experience has manifested itself in a conscious expression inside of the OECS. And at this meeting, we agreed in principle to pursue the application made by French St. Martin for them also to join as associate members of the OECS. And there are Dutch territories which are interested. and we will have that flexibility. In short, when you go about your business, don't think that what is happening in Montserrat is only between Joseph, Paul, and who is the Prime Minister in England now? I think we got to send Joseph give them. We have to send Joseph give them. Joseph, you should go there and leave this give Paul. You want to leave this one give Paul?
I'm not sure.
No, it's remember that the OECS is part of you. And it is very easy, for instance, here in Montserrat, you have a police force of about 80. 30-something of them from St. Vincent and Grenadines. Another 30-something come from Dominica. I think must be 2 from Montserrat and 1 from Grenada. All that is part of it. And I put it in this manner so that you see the practical benefits to the people inside of Montserrat. I want to say this though. We have been through a very difficult period. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we had COVID like everybody else. We were minding our business, and on March the 11th, they tell us this thing come to us. March 11, 2020, it come from Wuhan or wherever it came from. That was bad enough. Then in April 2021, we had 32 volcanic eruptions in the month of April. Then on the 2nd of July last year, we had Hurricane Elsa, then a drought a little later, a short period of time. And then on February 24th, the Russian aggression in Ukraine had knock-on effects on all of us with rising prices and supply chain problems and the like. If it were not for the regional integration movement in the OECS and CARICOM, we would not have been able to survive these last 2.5 years as well as we have survived them. We're still not out of the woods. But the regional integration movement is an important pillar in our quest to respair. It's a beautiful word, R-E-S-P-A-I-R. It's an old English word. Hasn't been used much since the 16th century. It means fresh hope. After a period of convulsions, after a period of extreme dislocation, even despair. And while we are building back better and stronger, we have to have something existential called fresh hope. And the integration movement is part of the practical manifestation of that fresh hope, because we are told in 1 Corinthians, Donald Trump said 1 Corinthians. In 1 Corinthians, he said number 1 Corinthians. And but anyway, number 1 Corinthians. But we and I know who went to Sunday school is 1 Corinthians. In 1 Corinthians, there are 3 virtues which are conjoined. Hope. Well, first of all, hope. And this one is fresh hope. It's conjoined with faith. But faith without works is dead. And part of the works is the integration movement like the OECS. And it is linked to with love, which we have shown here tonight. And love, as I have told my brother, when he's seeking it, is a never fixed mark and looks on tempests and is never shaken. If it is shaken, when tempests come, it's not love. Just like when volcano come in Montserrat, it didn't shake the people love for Mother Montserrat. Now shake it for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Prime Minister Gonzalez. And now we'll have the Honorable Patrick Sillé, of the Vice President of the Territorial Council of Guadeloupe.
Oui. Bonsoir à tous.
Bonsoir.
Monsieur le Premier ministre. Alors, j'avais
Good
pas
evening
prévu,
all. I
bien
didn't
sûr,
plan on speaking,
d'intervenir, mais
but
pour le peuple guadeloupéen qui vous adresse son bonsoir fraternel, je dois le faire.
so it's for the people of Guadeloupe who address to you their fraternal.
Alors, je voudrais tout simplement vous dire, c'est une fierté pour nous
I just want to tell you that I'm very proud
d'être ici
to be here
à l'OECO.
at the OECS.
Quelque part, ça veut dire pour nous,
For us, it means
nous sommes en train
that we are
de
becoming
rectifier les erreurs de l'histoire.
and we are finding solutions for the errors of our history
Car nous
because
faisons peuple.
we are one people.
Nous faisons peuple de la Caraïbe parce que nous avons le même parcours, la même histoire.
We are the people of the Caribbean because we have the same history.
Et c'est pourquoi que ici,
And
ensemble,
it's now, together,
nous allons pouvoir encore affronter d'autres combats.
we will be able to fight together.
Et comme on dit chez nous,
And as we say home,
ensemble nous plus forts.
together we are
Ça-
stronger.
C'est du créole que je parle. Ça veut dire
I
que,
speak Creole.
ça veut dire que rassemblés, nous sommes plus forts et nous gagnons encore d'autres combats.
So it means that together we will be stronger and we will fight our battles.
Nous sommes sur un grand marché de la Caraïbe
We are on a big Caribbean market
et nous devons pouvoir échanger,
and we have to be able to exchange products,
parler, converser, se rencontrer comme aujourd'hui.
speak together, meet together like today.
Et c'est pourquoi je vous dis que la route est encore longue, mais nous, désormais, on fait partie de cette équipe et nous irons vraiment, je l'espère en tout cas, très loin. Merci.
And even if the road is still long, we will go together on this road and we are committed to be together and work together.
Okay, I want to respond to the Honorable Paul Lewis with the suggestions he made. As I said earlier, we totally accept his recommendations. We can discuss the consulting fee, Honorable Lewis, but essentially there are a number of initiatives that we already have in place. One of them are a series of school campaigns. We try as much as possible through the Education Development Unit to engage students. And if you go on our YouTube site, you'll see some of that. We have programs run by students themselves doing their own broadcasts throughout the COVID period, talking about their experiences and just interviewing other students about a whole variety of topics. We also have published a social studies textbook on OECS integration that will help teachers and students get a deeper understanding of the integration process. And that is being embedded in all the schools at primary and secondary level in the OECS. There's a series of grassroots regional productions that we've done. For the 40th anniversary, we got a group called Check Campeche that actually did a film for us, trying to translate all what you heard here today in terms of a grassroots understanding of what this regional integration thing is all about. And it's a very humorous program. It's in English and in Creole. The Creole so that we could reach the audiences in Guadeloupe and Martinique as well. And it's very powerful hits. So I'd encourage you to go, if you search for OECS on YouTube, the channel, and look for Check Campeche, you will see that production there. We also have are planning to bring back the OECS Newslink, which was a radio program that was broadcast across the OECS, a news program. We have set up a network of the government information services across all of the OECS that gives us the capability to do simulcast. So there's an active exchange of news, and you'll see more and more on your local TV stations, on the government information system. You will see news from other OECS countries, news about the OECS, and they work very closely together. They actually work semi-independently from us because they've actually set themselves up as a network supported by our communications unit, and they've elected their own rotating chairperson. They plan their own programs. Like this event happening here in Montserrat has been broadcast by all the GIS programs across the OECS, and they also exchange information. Now, what we are planning to do with that network is to provide support to them, because you know now the technology is changing very rapidly. So we want to do joint procurement of the high-end technical equipment to them so that they can broadcast in 4G. They can get new cameras, you know, text readers and so on. So that, because again, rather than each government having to procure this separately, if we do it as a group and use our relations with foreign countries, diplomatic relations, to see what support we can get, organize tours for the GIS people to go to countries with whom we have relations. We just signed a huge agreement with Africa to be involved with trade and investment with Africa. All of this is you're going to see more and more of what is happening. So you're perfectly correct, mea culpa, Honorable Paul, but we are going to ramp up the communications. And our social media will be more active. We want to have more town halls and community interventions. So expect to see increasingly, whenever a team from the OECS visits for whatever purpose, whether it's education, health, agriculture, that there will be some public interaction with the relevant stakeholders. So we cannot have, I remember we had a meeting of ministers of agriculture in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Minister of Agriculture in St. Vincent is one of our most proactive ministers of agriculture. And it was held in the NIS. The NIS room is a circular amphitheater. So actually the head table is the center of the circle. And what he did, normally when we have these ministerials, we invite all the stakeholders to come to the opening event. So he brought all the farmers groups and so on together to attend. But guess what? He told us he wants the farmers groups not just to attend the opening ceremony, but to stay seated in the room throughout the entire ministerial meeting. And that was an amazing experience for us, because you know what? Whereas if the ministers were, after the opening ceremony, they sat by themselves and discussed issues, you might have a little tussle, people discussing issues, wanting to show their preferences. All the ministers were on their best behavior. Why? Because the farmers of St. Vincent were sitting around behind them, hearing what they were saying. And that introduced an atmosphere of accountability like we've never seen in a meeting before. And this is the model that we want to use. So that accountability to the public, for the public to understand what we're doing, to give us feedback, to give us ideas, to tell us what your ambitions are, and to tell us where you think we can do better. We welcome that. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard from us. I think we can allow 25 minutes for questions. We have a 7 o'clock engagement, so 25 minutes for questions and answers. Floor is open. There's a mic in the middle. Address your question to whoever, if you so desire.
Good evening.
Yeah, mic is on.
Good evening, members at the head table. And of course, my name is James White. I'm representing Radio Montserrat. And I'm very happy to see some of my colleagues from Martinique and Guadeloupe Bonsoir. It's good to have you all. You know, bienvenue à Montserrat. Yes, so when we are looking at the primary objectives of this august body, this intergovernmental construct, when we look at the promotion of harmonization, also cooperation and integration. And forgive me if I refer to Dr. Ralph Gonzalez as comrade, you know, because we are that close. You know, I know him for a very long time. You know, he was talking about a number of challenges that would have confronted this region, this sub-region, over the years, and in particular the last 2 years with the COVID-19 pandemic and, of course, the war in Ukraine. Some people tend to call it conflict and whatever else. But how does it affect how we operate? I know that a number of sectors have been impacted during this period, in particular the last 2 years. So during your deliberations, what are some of the decisions or positions taken to help each one of the OECS territories to maneuver during this trying period? Yes, the DG, can you please start off, and then we'll get some feedback from Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, comrade.
Not a problem. I mentioned the 5 strategic priorities. All of these things have come from an analysis of the current situation that we face. Remember, we've come through not just COVID, but a series of crises, of volcanic eruptions, climate change issues, and now the war in Ukraine, as you've said. There are many lessons that we have learned from that, but there are also many opportunities embedded in this. And we've seen the impact of all of that collectively. For example, rising prices. There's all kinds of things happening in the consumer space. I don't know if you've seen this on social media, but what is happening, a lot of big manufacturers now, I saw an ad where toilet paper, the same size bale, and it's exactly the same size, the same price, but guess what? The number of sheets in each roll is much significantly less.
Yes.
So it is a kind of fake inflation that is happening, where you're paying the same price for less, which is increasing their profits. You have the cost of transportation increasing, and then scarcity and the difficulty of transportation and so on. So all of these things, we have to take a more transformational approach to these challenges. The issue, the heads at this meeting were very preoccupied, and they received, we had a discussion with the Caribbean Development Bank on a consultancy that would look at all of the ideas that various heads have put on the table on how we can resolve the air and sea connectivity problem and what we need to do. And there's a fast track for that. We need to do it fast. So we're looking at these things. We're looking at food security. And food security, not just in the context of we're having difficulty importing food, principally from Miami, and therefore we need to diversify our supply of food. But food security also at the level of nutrition of school kids. There's no reason why schools, for example, teaching agriculture, or every school doing agriculture, whether as a school club or as a subject, should not be making a contribution to its own food security. Students growing vegetables and so on that can be used in the school garden. Purchasing for school feeding programs from the farmers in the community. So it requires, you know, it's not a difficult thing to do, but it requires serious political will, and for us to draw on all of the resources. Basically, the answer to that is greater self-reliance. Self-reliance at a community level, self-reliance at the level of the home. In places like Cuba, for example, almost every household, even if it's in an old bathtub, they are growing lettuce or some nutritious kale or something to supplement the household. So we have to take that approach, right? A self-sufficient approach that will help us to ease the pain of this current thing and also have us less reliant on external sources of supply for as many things as we need to. And in the context of the OECS, we creating opportunities for us to look at the specializations of each country and enable that trade to happen. So the OECS in agriculture is talking about a project called FAST, which is creating a food corridor across the OECS that would help. So the governments now can use that program of agricultural production across the OECS to exchange products where each person has a comparative advantage, and to then use that now, not just to have it on the market, but to deal with indigent households, the provision of support to the poor, and so on.
Okay.
And there are other areas, but perhaps other heads
If
can respond.
if I may say this, brethren, and it would answer it for a number of persons. In addition to what I will call the developmental projects, which Didacus was addressing, and also Paul spoke to some which are ongoing. The basic bread and butter, as you may call it, of the integration movement, which those things which help us to keep ourselves together and strengthen our institutions in going forward, they were addressed at this meeting. Let's take a few. In the matter of the court system, we approved today 2 additional judges for the Court of Appeal and 5 judges additional for the High Court. We approve an acceleration of the integration of the Magistrates' Court into the total overall court system, where the Chief Justice will be able to have the full extent of disciplinary powers over magistrates. Magistrates are not under the authority of the Chief Justice the way in which judges in the High Court are. It's a very important thing for the delivery of justice and protection of people's rights. We approved the budget for the court. We approved the budget for the OECS. We approved a program for the OECS over the next 3 years, because you just can't do things here scare 'em. Can't do it ad hoc. In relation to the economic union, we have addressed ways to make the freedom of movement which we have more meaningful by looking at contingent rights. That is to say, a person might be able to move free and get a job without a work permit in the OECS. But what about your wife, your spouse? Can they move to and get a job? What about the children? Can they go to school there? Can they access the medical services the same as nationals of the particular country? These are bread and butter issues which touch people's lives, and there are many of those things. And you know, we had a discussion. We approved the budget also for the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, and a number of measures which we have to take to get Category 1 status for the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority jurisdiction. All of these things, a range of practical measures. They might be boring, they might not be sexy, but they really touch life, living, and production. So that would be my answer to you, in addition to what Didacus was saying.
Yeah.
You know, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago in Barbados between the European Union and CARIFORUM, which is CARICOM, which includes the OECS, and the Dominican Republic and Cuba. But the OECS organization was there because there are issues which connect. Europe is a very important area. Today, the president of the council in Martinique, Brother Lechemi, he was talking about mobilizing the political resources which he has links with in France to see, for instance, if we can get France to come back, to rejoin the Caribbean Development Bank as a non-borrowing member, to bring in capital into the bank, which would help all of us, because the more the capital is increased, the more the bank can go and even get more money on top of that capital, and there's more which we can borrow to do things to help to build ports, hospitals, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, thank you very much. So in the essence of time, I'll give one of my other colleagues a chance.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda Daly, Nurse Brenda Daly, and I want to welcome you to Montserrat. Now, I have a serious question. Nurses are the backbone of our healthcare delivery system, and we have seen the role that nurses have played, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. However, we have seen mass migration of our nurses from our region, and Montserrat right now is suffering. We hardly have nurses. We are struggling with nurses, especially midwives. And I'm here to ask the question of our regional governments. What is being done to help stop the hemorrhage of our nurses from leaving to the bigger countries such as the United Kingdom, the US, and possibly Canada? What can the region do? I know that Grenada trained nurses. Nurses are being trained in St. Vincent, in Antigua and Barbuda, and Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis as well. One of the things that is happening is that nurses are not being paid well. And we all know that. The incentives for nurses are very little and very limited. And when we look at the future of our young people, because you're looking at what we have now, but in terms of the future of nursing in our Caribbean countries, we're seeing that there's hardly anybody going to be interested in nursing coming out of school. Nurses have to be looked at as professionals and be paid as such. Lots of us are trained well in terms of having degrees, even doctorate in nursing, but yet we are looked at as just that little person. And so it's not encouraging for young persons. If you ask them, what are you going to do when you leave school? Nobody wants to be a nurse, because when they look at the struggles that nurses are facing today, it looks as if it's not something that anyone would want to be interested in. But yet, we need our people to be taken care of. So the question I'm asking, can these regional governments do something? Montserrat need nurses. We need a few midwives. We need a few RNs, registered nurses. And in terms of salaries and incentives, we've been asking our government for years for night duty allowance, professional allowance, the different allowances, but yet all we get is a basic salary and a uniform allowance, which we're still even waiting on. So can we do something? Can you at the head table do something for the nurses within the region, and so that you can keep the cream of your crop? For me, I'm a nurse anesthetist, and the amount of money that the government of Montserrat pay to send me to train, and imagine someone from the UK will snap me up just like that, who have not invested in me. So can you do something? This is my plea for people in Montserrat and for the region. Thank you.
I've asked Dr. Michel, who is a medical practitioner, to, Dr. Joe, to address you first. And then.
Right, thank you very much. That's a very important question. I had a number of opportunities to speak to the nurses, and I always said to them, especially in St. Kitts, everybody else can strike. If a politician strikes, a lot of people will say, thank God. And even if doctors were to strike, it wouldn't be felt for maybe a number of hours or a day. But if the nurses strike, it will be felt immediately. And I said that to say this, that what you're experiencing here in Montserrat, I'm sure it is being experienced throughout the region, and we are certainly experiencing it in St. Kitts and Nevis. And the nurses have been asking over and over again, what are we going to do to keep them? To the point where many of them would have left, but not only that, they would have left the profession for different professions within the country, because they would have given up on nursing. And outside of that, we would have had to import a number of nurses. For example, we import Philippine nurses and nurses from Cuba. I'm sure that maybe a few other countries would do that. So what I would suggest, it might be difficult to increase salary significantly sometimes, and I understand that, especially with the type of civil service that we have. What I am seeking to do and what I think can be done in my discussion is to, in a sense, increase the opportunities for nurses. One, in terms of studying, many of the nurses may not get opportunities. Two, the professional allowance that you speak about, many of them don't get it. Three, in terms of benefits of housing and so forth, they don't get it either. Now, I was on a panel one time, interestingly, and one of the things that were mentioned to me was that those things may not contribute directly to persons' pension when they get older, depending on the country you live in and how they calculate your social security based on your income and how many years you would have contributed. Those things are very important. But in terms of the brain drain, we have to make sure that we put things in place to keep our nurses. I would suggest, for example, in St. Kitts, and you talk about the COVID, we paid an honorarium, or we are going to pay an honorarium. It is to be paid tomorrow. I know in another country it was promised and it wasn't paid. But I'm saying that was a gesture, a very important gesture to tell the nurses that we care and that we understand the sacrifices that you would have made. And we have to really respect that in tangible ways, not just talk that the nurses are good and we're happy to have the nurses, but in tangible ways. And that was one of the tangible ways we saw that we could have done it. Two, in terms of transportation, can we give an allowance for transportation? Can we give an allowance for housing? Those things are going to be critical because I will say that as we see what is taking place in the north and other countries that can give more, there will be a higher demand. So what you have said today in my wrapping up is that I want to say as a nurse in my St. Kitts and Nevis, we see nursing as important, even though we complain a lot. I myself, as a medical doctor, respect your work, and I would like to say that you should continue to press the issue of how you can keep your nurses in your country. My final thing would say in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are looking at scholarships, housing, traveling allowance, and better working condition and hours in order for us to compete with the countries up north. So it is a very important matter, and the OECS, I think, that can be on the agenda as well. Thank you.
May I say something about the nurses issue? We are addressing a very complicated question, but we have to find, if not solutions, some amelioration. Because what the sister has just said, all what she said is quite true in my view. We can stop legislatively people coming to your country to recruit nurses. What you cannot do, you cannot stop an individual nurse from being recruited. You can say that if somebody is coming inside to recruit, that you have to be registered, you have to do this, and you're not allowing it. But it's a free and democratic society. You want to leave? I can't handcuff you. You're going. We have to make the situation more attractive for the nurses to stay. We have done a few things in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they have helped to some measure, but still we have a big hemorrhaging. First of all, we train a lot of nurses. We train a lot more than we actually need. And what we do, we give them a free nursing education, and we pay them the equivalent of $400 a month as a stipend while they are studying. I give them a free education, and I pay them to study. When the teachers come to me and ask me why you don't do the same thing for us, or people who, not teachers, but who want to get into the teaching profession, I said to them, can you give injection? I really don't have any answer other than to answer them flippantly. Nursing assistants were not pensionable. I make them pensionable. Nurses receive 2 pensions, one from the state and one through the NIS. Well, all the civil servants get that, but the nurses, because we are talking about the nurses. But there are lots of areas in which Drew mentioned many of them that we could try to see how we can improve the material circumstances. The truth of the matter is this: what keeps a lot of nurses is the love for the country. Most of them are women. The love for the man which they have in the country, and they don't want to leave the man. They have children, they don't want to leave them. But what happens is this: some of the bright young ones leave, and some of the more experienced ones who have already had their children and they're growing up, and they leave and they take particular jobs. And there are areas which they look for. Nurse anesthetists, for instance. Midwives are in short supply. We could probably send you a couple of RNs, or we train some and say, okay, or if you want, we can train a few Montserratans, if you wish. In St. Vincent, we have an excellent nursing school, and we do the degree program from Jamaica, the bachelor's program. We can provide some scholarships. Right at the moment, I give 4 students from Ghana, 4 women from Ghana, young ladies, scholarships under agreement. And I can give some, if you want to send 3 or 4, I will pay their fees and everything, put them up, give them the 1,000 EC dollars, because we have to help one another in all kind of different ways. When I had a problem with Sufri, you send me people from the Montserrat Volcano Observatory. You send me Christopher. So 2 hands for clap. So there are things like this, but it's not an easy problem to address, because we are never going to have the money to pay as much as what the other countries pay. But I want to say this: for a lot of nurses who go away, the grass look greener on the other side. When they go over there, in some of these places, in England, I happen to know this, it happened in America too. You're black, they give you some of the more menial tasks. Some of the other nurses who there, they feel they got plenty qualifications and they're too posh to wash. And you have to do the washing. So let we don't fool our fat. There are some practical problems too, and sometimes they go and it's hard, but some shame to come back. So it's not all one way. What we have to do is to work as we are doing now with the National Training Unit attached to the National Health Service. We are not allowing you to recruit anybody. Individuals can go ahead, can't hold them back. But what we do, we say we will send half a dozen nurses to be with you for 6 months, 8 months. So they get further on the job training. And you send us a similar number from England to come to the hospital in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to help to impart practices from a more quote-unquote developed medical system and so on and so forth. But it's not an easy problem. Remember I just told you we can't solve it, but we can do many things to ameliorate it. Let me just say, Joseph should be very happy that he has a nurse anesthetist who is so patriotic, who says she ain't going nowhere. She's staying in Montserrat to help the people, and that is fantastic. Girl, you go get rewards. If not now, when you go over to Beulah land.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Oui, juste un petit mot sur le sujet.
Yes, the light.
Juste un petit mot sur le sujet. Je serai assez bref parce que Ralph a...
Just one word because Ralph has stated a lot of things. So.
Il a déjà tout dit. La première chose, c'est que je pense qu'il y a plusieurs enjeux.
There is a lot of at stakes.
Et les 2 années de Covid nous ont bien démontré que dans le domaine de la santé, les précarités, les difficultés du personnel de santé sont présents.
The COVID pandemic has shown us how precarious can be the medical staff.
On a même le sentiment que la politique de santé, surtout pour nos 2 pays de la Martinique et de la Guadeloupe, ainsi que le personnel de santé ont été négligés.
Sometimes we do feel in Guadeloupe and Martinique, for example, as the same example as you, that medical policy and the medical staff has been neglected.
Et je me bats pour, à la fois en Martinique, en Guadeloupe, mais aussi au niveau national, de relever les salaires des infirmières et des infirmiers et des médecins qui sont plus des militants que des professionnels.
Sometimes we do feel like nurses are more activists than professional because they always have to ask for raising salaries.
Il y en a d'ailleurs beaucoup qui ont laissé leur vie à cause de la Covid.
Sometimes a lot, and we do observe that a lot have died from the pandemic. So,
mais il y a un deuxième enjeu qu'a relevé l'intervenante, c'est la question de la fuite démographique et surtout la baisse de nos spécialistes.
Another stake that this person has shown is the brain drain and the exit of some specialists from our countries.
Notamment dans le domaine clé qui est le domaine de la santé.
And especially in this key area that is medicine and health.
Quand les gens quittent un pays et vont pas tellement dans le pays à côté, mais en Europe, c'est que le pays manque d'attractivité pour certaines professions.
When people leave for a foreign country and especially a really far country, it shows that our countries are not attractive enough.
C'est pour ça qu'il faut organiser les choses pour que l'attractivité à l'intérieur du pays, notamment dans un domaine aussi important que la santé, demeure quelque chose de précieux et d'important.
That's why we need to work together to ensure that our attractivity remains in our countries and especially in this key area that is health.
C'est pour cela que la Martinique et la Guadeloupe, mais aussi Saint-Martin, au sein de l'OECS, mènent un travail très intéressant de coopération entre nos différents pays en matière de santé.
That's why Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Saint Martin is already doing a cooperation work in this critical.
Parce qu'au-delà des professionnels, il y a aussi la population.
Because beyond the professional, there is also the population that is suffering.
Et nous devons construire une solidarité en matière de santé, qu'on soit en Martinique, en Guadeloupe, ici à Saint-Vincent, ou à Sainte-Lucie, ou à Montserrat.
So we must build a solidarity in terms of health in Guadeloupe, in Martinique, but also in St. Vincent and every country that constitutes the OECS.
À la fois sur le traitement médical, mais aussi sur la recherche de solutions adaptées à nos réalités locales, notamment notre culture.
both in terms of medical practices
et de culture.
but also on our culture.
Il ne faut jamais oublier que nous avons une biodiversité et un usage extrêmement important et que nous avons la capacité aussi, autant que les Américains ou les Français ou les Européens, à faire des médicaments localement ou des paramédicaments pour traiter les maladies que nous avons sur place.
There is something really important that we must not forget is that we have a rich biodiversity and we should be able in our territories to produce our own medicine.
Notamment dans le domaine du cancer, en matière de technologie, nous travaillons avec l'ensemble des experts de l'OECS. Il y aura d'ailleurs une réunion des ministres de santé qui va se réunir parce qu'il faut absolument, face à la montée du cancer dans les Caraïbes, avoir des appareils de très haute technologie.
Especially in the scope of cancer, we are working with our Caribbean neighbors because we should benefit from really high-tech technology, high-tech equipment to detect cancer. Facing the rise of cancers in the Caribbean.
Et nous pourrions faire, à travers la Martinique et la Guadeloupe, que la Caraïbe, le OECS, soit un point très fort en matière de médecine nucléaire, notamment en matière de cyclotron.
We could work towards transforming the OECS and the Caribbean in general of a really high-tech detection center and around cyclotron technology.
On n'aura plus besoin d'aller aux États-Unis pour faire les traitements et les examens liés à l'identification de la maladie par la médecine nucléaire. Il suffira de venir en Martinique ou en Guadeloupe pour faire ce type d'examen.
We won't have to go directly to the United States to detect cancer, but we could go to Martinique and Guadeloupe.
C'est pour ça que cette intervention, elle est précieuse. C'est à la fois un problème humain, un problème de santé publique et un problème de performance pour nous permettre de traiter sans pour cela faire 8000 km, 4000 km nos malades bocaïno, c'est-à-dire près de chez nous.
That's why your intervention has been really appreciated because it is not only a problem of health, but it's also a problem of attractivity and cooperation. And we shouldn't have to travel 4,000 kilometers, 8,000 kilometers to actually be being treated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Dr. Didkus to intervene, and unfortunately, we will have to wrap it up there because we have another engagement.
Just one crucial.
One moment. You want to same thing, and then networks coming. Yeah.
Just quickly, I think this challenge points to the need for a multidimensional approach to the problem. At the OECS, we've been talking about going back to the idea of centers of excellence. So you heard President Lechimi talk about the cancer center with the cyclotron in Martinique and Guadeloupe. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have the Prime Minister Gonzalez has had an arrangement with the Cubans for the treatment of diabetic foot. And, you know, amazingly, all across the OECS, people are having record amputations for diabetes. But the Cubans have a cure for that with a treatment that is available in St. Vincent. And St. Vincent has offered treatment to people from other OECS member states. So again, because of our limited resources, the need to have centers of specialization that can serve the region as a whole, sharing what we have, as PM Gonzalez said. Additionally, there's the issue of how can there's no way we can compete. I learned just 2 months ago that in some parts of the states, at the height of the COVID crisis, nurses were being paid as much as $8,000 US a week to move across to the OECS. But guess what happened? When they went to the US, to offer their services, they were put in the crisis units that nobody else in the US wanted to work in. So, you know, while as Prime Minister Gonzalez said, the grass may look greener on the other side, there's been exploitation. So the question is, how can we manage migration with opportunity? And I heard what Prime Minister Gonzalez said, but one of the suggestions we've made at the OECS level is let us look at a program for rotation of nurses, because I certainly agree with the idea of legislating so recruiters cannot come in to recruit people so you have a brain drain. You can't stop individuals from going. But one way of balancing that is to have a scheme whereby if you have served 15 years in the service, then you're front of line, you allow maybe 20 nurses to go up for a period of 6 months, just as we do with the farm workers program. So they go, their jobs are retained at home, they come back, they've earned a good raise, they come back, they spend more time, the next batch goes, and there's that rotation. The value of that is that you're gaining more experience, and you are also earning more, but you don't have to lose your entire tenure in the country in order to do that. One last quick point. 20 years ago, I served on a Commonwealth task force. That was because this is not new. That was looking at the migration, the brain drain of teachers and nurses. And we were principally looking at the drain to Britain. And the British had a team that included some top lawyers arguing the case for their recruiters. And you know what they said in the end? We're not recruiting those people. It's private recruiters who are doing the job. So we said, let me ask you something. If Gaddafi, who was a big problem for the British at the time, came to the UK to hire came to you to hire nuclear scientists, came to the UK, would you allow those scientists to go? On the grounds of national security, no. But when you hire one science teacher from St. Lucia to go to the UK, the immediate outcome of that is that you cripple our capacity for teaching physics for the next 15 years because it's so difficult to get a good physics teacher. So on grounds of, these things are also matters of national security because to cripple our capacity for human development is to permanently hobble our national development.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for coming to Montserrat. I had this question for Mr. Gonzalez and probably Mr. Brown, who left, really. This afternoon, this morning, a friend of mine had a crisis in Antigua. And he had to make efforts to get out on a cargo vessel this afternoon because all the flights are booked out until Sunday. You have come here and you have seen that the British have put a cliffside on both sides of the runway to maintain and preserve our Britishness and our hospitality. The question is, what can you, as the OECS, do to help us, considering that we have a serious issue of transportation and especially access into Montserrat? We've been hearing talk about Liat, and nobody has been really come forward. Montserrat has had the most unusual situation where we have had, before the COVID, we had to pay $600-700 to access the Liat network. So what every other Caribbean island was paying, we had to pay additional money to access the Liat network. The question is, for transportation, for Montserrat, and I've noticed that the selection of aircrafts that I'm hearing coming from Mr. Brown and others is that the type of aircrafts will not be able to come into Montserrat. So my question is, what can you do to help us to get out of this situation? Because we have a serious access issue.
We had a discussion yesterday, on regional air transport because we had the Caribbean Development Bank in on Zoom because a few weeks ago, we got the CDB, the Caribbean Development Bank, to get involved. We were recruiting a consultant for us to see what is the best immediate short-term measure and a more longer-term one. To have a structured coming back of something, if not Liat, something similar to Liat. This thing is very painful for me. As you know, my brother, I have been in the forefront since 2001 to keep Liat in the skies. I fight Stanford on it. Remember that when they had it? we Caribbean Star, Caribbean Sun. Their governments, Barbados, Antigua, and Barbuda, and St. Vincent and Grenadines carrying this trade. St. Lucia said they ain't putting no money under different governments. Grenada no until to the last minute. Keith Mitchell put in a little piece of change, but that was really to help with the burial rights of Liat. Then St. Kitts, Prime Minister could tell you neither the former Prime Minister or the one before were interested in that, because everybody was having a nice free ride. And then the pilots and other workers behaving in particular ways. Then the strain was too much, and Mia went to the IMF. They couldn't bear the debt, continuing. Gaston and I couldn't carry the thing. Now it looks as though we having everybody coming back on board. So we will, I'm sure we'll get somewhere, because all what was theory has now been demonstrated in practice that Liat is not a financial proposition. It is only marginally, but it is a social and economic service. It's a public good. That's the general issue. Now, in relation to Montserrat, I don't know the length of your strip, but the Premier has told me that Twin Otters can land. Twin Otters, I don't know what is the situation. The numbers of Twin Otters are not in the region. They're not very many. And the availability is fairly limited. A new Twin Otter is probably in the region of 5 million US. You can get an older one refurbished. You may get it to 3-point-something million US. And then the servicing of it, maintenance, and all the rest of it. I don't know whether 4,000 persons and not a lot of tourism. What is the economics of 1 or 2 Twin Otters? I don't know. You ask me about somebody who has been involved in this business for a very long time. Maybe if a Twin Otter were to come, unless it is heavily subsidized, the dance would not be able to pay for the light. Your overs where coming from. So it's not an easy issue, but clearly it is something which everybody needs to address. But I don't believe when we are addressing an issue like air transportation, we have to look at all the practical questions, because the economics of it is important, so that it doesn't become a political football for one side or the other. Because once it gets there, it becomes more complicated even to solve. But obviously you need better airlift. We all need better airlift, but you have a special problem. Maybe you can get the British government to buy 1 or 2 Twin Otter for you and subsidize it on an ongoing basis. I don't know. But clearly, I happen to know that I had a very brief conversation with the Premier, and he says to me it's a matter which they're looking at, the issue of air transportation, because it's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that you need better air links. Clearly.
Thank you very much. The problem is that when you sit with the big boys, you have to make sure that they don't push you aside. So over the past 2 days, you have been hearing about connectivity, and that's an issue within the region, whether it's airlift or whether it's sea it is a problem within the region. And what I've said to Prime Minister Brown and the other members, when you're looking at LEAT, look at the possibility of including, not Montserrat buying, because Montserrat not going to buy aircraft. It doesn't make sense for us to buy aircraft. But if there are other areas, other countries who you can utilize the Twin-Otter service to, like Nevis, for instance, then you may want to put in your fleet at least one Twin-Otter service, Twin-Otter, which will facilitate Montserrat and Nevis. Not that we're going to buy it. And that is what I said to them. Don't just think about the 48-seater, which can land in any case, but consider whether you want to include a Twin-Otter into your fleet, which I think is a reasonable suggestion. And I'm going to stick by that position. We're not going to buy it. We're not going to, but we will. We have a service, and they can offer the service, and that's my position. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for spending this 2.5 hours with us. We would have hoped that we would have loved to stay a little longer with you, but we have a 7 o'clock engagement that is now 1 into 7. So thank you very much. I hope you find this enlightening. Okay, I hope you find it enlightening, educational, and I think this is the format that we want to use going into the future with our meetings when we come in person to our member states.
Yes. Premier, further to our commitment made earlier to listen better to the voices of the citizens of the OECS, I want to share an email address with you that anybody can send to us ideas, suggestions, criticisms, feedback that we can take into account in doing our work in any sector. And it is communications at oecs.int. And if you use the subject line authority feedback, it will be easy for us to aggregate all of that and even respond to you or take these ideas into account in shaping our programs. So we look forward to receiving your feedback on an ongoing basis beyond the event here tonight. Communications at oecs.int. Subject line, authority feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.